Hey, good morning, guys. Okay, I'm going to try to keep today a little simple. I'm not going to give an assignment today. Tomorrow I'm going to give you like a take-home quiz that you can, spend time on and look up the answers and stuff like that. So that'll be tomorrow, and you'll have some time to do that. Anyway, today I want to focus on one of the best days in American history. It's known as D-Day. And Americans, along with the British and Canadians, left Great Britain in all sorts of boats and landing crafts and airplanes and attacked the beaches of occupied France. Take a look at this map. You can see in the top it's Great Britain, and then a whole bunch of blue lines headed toward France. Some are airplanes and some are boats and all sorts of stuff, but it's this massive landing. I'll just take you through some of it, and what it did is it opened up that fourth area of getting Germany. Remember, the Russians were coming in, we were coming in from Italy, we were bombing them from the north, and now we're going to close the door on them. And this is kind of the turning point of World War II. So the night before the attack, because we wanted to land the troops during the day on the beaches, all sorts of airplanes took off. A lot of them dropped paratroopers. 13,000 parachute guys with guns and all sorts of stuff get dropped in behind the beaches. Also, gliders that could carry jeeps and weapons and stuff like that were towed by airplanes, and then they quietly, after they let go of the airplane, they quietly kind of came in and landed in the countryside. So it was a big deal. Here is a pretty famous picture of the General Eisenhower, who eventually becomes president, talking to the paratroop guys. They're all dressed up and everything like that. They're going to be doing some really dangerous stuff. You can see right there, there's kind of like a graphic of parachute guys and their guns and what they wore and all sorts of stuff like that. But although this picture was taken during the day, these guys jumped at night. So you can imagine how crazy it was with all the firing and everything like that. You can see right there, there's some gliders that have all landed, and many of them look like they're broken. What happened is the tail came apart, and out of the back of the glider could come all sorts of vehicles. So, this was a big deal. It was about a 20-minute ride across the English Channel, and then they dropped them off. So there you can see a glider picture with a tank coming out of it. Pretty cool stuff. The horror of D-Day for those people was bad. The beach landings were the ones that were the most scary, as far as having to land on beaches with Nazis on shooting at them. We talked about the Atlantic Wall. They were ready. And the first couple thousand troops that hit the beaches were massacred. It was bad. You might have heard of the movie Saving Private Ryan. And if you can get on YouTube and look up Saving Private Ryan, the first 20 minutes of that movie is the beach landings. And although we were successful, over 2,000 of our soldiers died on those beaches. So, you look here and there's all these maps and different countries and where they're attacking. This was a huge invasion of beaches, and it says, where the German resistance was. And this was something that took weeks and weeks to get farther and farther into France. But they couldn't even drop you off at the beach. They got close, and then the door of the boat that you were in came out, and you had to run out and wade across the waves and ocean and everything. It's just crazy stuff. And then all those obstacles that the Germans had set up. So this D-Day landing is really incredible, and I'm going to put two clips for you to watch that I think that do it justice. One is a simple history, and then the other is another one. And then after D-Day, it takes about a year to beat the Germans. We have to liberate France and then push toward the German border, and it is really kind of like closing the final door on Germany. And eventually, they end up having to surrender, and Hitler dies, which we'll get to. Okay, so this is called D-Day. It's a big deal, and I want you just to watch this. Tomorrow I'll post a Google form, so don't worry about any homework today. Okay, guys.
All right, said the Americans, let's do it our way as well. Germany had made itself a lot of enemies, and millions of Allied troops had been gathering in England as factories worked around the clock producing the war material needed for a super crazy massive, the likes of which the world has never seen before, invasion of Europe. The Germans knew an Allied invasion would come, but they didn't know where it would land. Thanks to Allied deception tactics, they thought there was a pretty good chance it would come at Calais, but the Allies were really going to land in Normandy because it was less fortified and the beaches were nicer. Under the careful planning of General Dwight D. Eisenhower, the invasion that had been long in the making was just about ready to go. Just one thing was preventing the launch: the British weather. For a short while, everyone sat around waiting for a decent day, and then it came. On the night of June 5th, over 1,000 bombers took off and raided coastline defenses, while paratroopers were dropped inland in a bit of a chaotic operation, tasked with sabotaging defenses and capturing key bridges to stop any German reinforcements from reaching the beaches. Early the next morning, the barrage came, as Allied ships fired a huge number of shells at the German fortifications, and then the landings. The Americans at Utah and Omaha, the British at Golden Sword, and the Canadians at Juneau. It was a tremendous struggle with a great loss of life, particularly at Omaha, but the Allied troops captured the beaches and the landings were a success. Then they began their movements inland. They took the port of Cherbourg and the city of Caen. The Americans moved south to capture Brittany. Then, in a massive disaster for the Germans, British and Canadian troops from the north and Americans from the south trapped the German 7th Army in a near wipeout encircling movement. In August, Allied troops landed in the south of France to little resistance. On one beach, all they found was a Frenchman handing out champagne. Paris was liberated, and the Germans were pushed out of France as the Allies entered Belgium. In the Far East, the Allies started to push the Japanese out of Burma, as the Americans launched a two-pronged offensive in the Pacific. In the south, General MacArthur led the push to liberate the Philippines, while General Nimitz oversaw the brutal island-hopping campaign. American forces had to make hard-fought landing after hard-fought landing on fiercely defended small islands as they moved steadily towards the Japanese mainland. The Japanese believed that the greatest thing a person could do was to die in battle, and the most dishonorable act was to surrender. As a result, they fought ferociously to the very end, and the closer the Americans got to the mainland, the more ferocious the resistance became. In February 1945, the Americans captured the island of Iwo Jima, and an intense firebombing campaign of Japan's wooden cities began. The Allies suffered some setbacks trying to liberate the Netherlands, but they were making progress and were now threatening the industrial heartland of Germany. Hitler's health, both mentally and physically, was rapidly deteriorating. Things were looking bad, and he was desperate. He said, "We need to turn this thing around, and I have just the trick. Remember a few years back when we blitzkrieged through the Ardennes and trapped the Allied forces in Belgium? Well, I'm going to do the exact same thing. Again." He gathered his forces and tried to pound them through the Ardennes. He used up the remainder of Germany's strength and resources, and he managed to create quite a nice bulge. He also trapped some American forces in the Belgian town of Bastogne. The Germans sent the trapped Americans a message saying surrender or be annihilated. When it was read out to the commanding officer, he said, "They want to surrender? No, sir, they want us to surrender." Nuts! And that's what they sent off as their official reply. General Patton's Third Army then managed to break the siege from the southwest, and the Germans were pushed back. Hitler's last-ditch attempt had failed, and what followed was a total collapse of the German forces. The Allies pushed into Germany from both sides. The Soviet Union took Warsaw and kept pushing to Berlin. In his bunker, Hitler realized all hope was lost. Berlin fell, and with it, Hitler's dreams of a great German empire. Two of the